pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. According to Wikipedia, quote, "The burning of Washington was a British invasion of Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, during the Chesapeake Campaign of the War of 1812. It was the only time since the American Revolutionary War that a foreign power has captured and occupied the capital of the United States." Following the defeat of an American force at the Battle of Bladensburg on August 24, 1814, a British army led by Major General Robert Ross marched on Washington City. That night, his forces set fire to multiple government and military buildings, including the Presidential Mansion and the United States Capitol. The attack was in part a retaliation for prior American actions in British-held Upper Canada, in which U.S. forces had burned and looted York the previous year, and had then burnt large portions of Port Dover. Less than 4 days after the attack began, a heavy thunderstorm, possibly a hurricane and a tornado, extinguished the fires and caused further destruction. The British occupation of Washington lasted for roughly 26 hours. President James Madison, members of his government, and the military fled the city in the wake of the British victory at Bladensburg. They found refuge for the night in Brookville, a small town in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is known today as, quote, "the United States Capitol for a day," end quote. President Madison spent the night in the house of Caleb Bentley, a Quaker who lived and worked as a silversmith in Brookville. Bentley's house, known today as the Madison House, still stands in Brookville. On August 24, 1814, the British, led by Ross and Cockburn, entered Washington with a force of 4,500 battle-hardened men. The plan to attack Washington had been formulated by Rear Admiral Cockburn, who predicted that, quote, "within a short period of time with enough force, we could easily have at our mercy the capital," end quote. Ross commanded the troops and was less optimistic. While Cockburn recommended burning the entire city, Ross planned to damage only public buildings. Ross, who was described by historian John McCavitt as, quote, "an officer and a gentleman," end quote, initially planned for an orderly surrender of Washington. However, as he and his men entered the city under a flag of truce, American soldiers remaining in the city treacherously opened fire, wounding Ross's horse and killing 2 of his men. McCavitt argued that this led him to, quote, "reluctantly order the burning of the White House and the Capitol building." The United States Capitol was, according to some contemporary travelers, the only building in Washington, quote, "worthy to be noticed," end quote. Thus it was a prime target for the British, for both its aesthetic and its symbolic value. Upon arrival into the city via Maryland Avenue, the British targeted the Capitol, first the southern wing, containing the House of Representatives, then the northern wing containing the Senate. Prior to setting it aflame, the British sacked the building, which at the time housed Congress, the Library of Congress, and the Supreme Court. Items looted by troops led by Rear Admiral Cockburn included a ledger entitled, quote, "an account of the receipts and expenditures of the United States for the year of 1810," end quote. The Admiral wrote on the inside leaf that it was, quote, "taken in President's room in the Capitol at the destruction of that building by the British on the capture of Washington, the 24th of August, 1814, end quote. He later gave it to his elder brother, Sir James Cockburn, the governor of Bermuda. The book was returned to the Library of Congress in 1940. The British intended to burn the building to the ground. They set fire to the southern wing first. The flames grew so quickly that the British were prevented from collecting enough wood to burn the stone walls completely. However, the Library of Congress's contents in the northern wing contributed to the flames on that side. Among the items destroyed, 3,000-volume collection of the Library of Congress, and the intricate decorations of the neoclassical columns, pediments, and sculptures designed by William Thornton in 1793 and Benjamin Latrobe in 1803. The wooden ceilings and floors burned, and the glass skylights melted from the intense heat. The building was not a complete loss. The House Rotunda, the East Lobby, the staircases, and Latrobe's famous corncob columns in the Senate entrance hall all survived. The superintendent of the public buildings of the city of Washington, Thomas Monroe, concluded that the loss to the Capitol amounted to $787,163.28, with $457,388.36 for the north wing and the main building, and $329,774.92 for the south wing. After burning the Capitol, the British turned northward up Pennsylvania Avenue towards the White House. After U.S. government officials and President Madison fled the city, First Lady Dolly Madison received a letter from her husband, urging her to be prepared to leave Washington at a moment's notice. Dolly organized the enslaved and other staff to save valuables from the British. James Madison's personal enslaved attendant, the 15-year-old boy, Paul Jennings, was an eyewitness. After later buying his freedom from the widow Dolly Madison, Jennings published his memoir in 1865, considered the first from the White House. In an excerpt from the book, quote, "It has been stated in print that when Mrs. Madison escaped from the White House, she cut out from the frame the large portrait of Washington, now in one of the parlors there, and carried it off. She had no time for doing it. It would have required a ladder to get it down. All she carried off was the silver in her reticule, as the British were thought to be but a few squares off, and were expected any moment." Jennings said the people who saved the painting and removed the objects actually were John Suze, Jean-Pierre Suzat, the French doorkeeper, and still living at the time of Jennings' memoir, and McGraw, the president's gardener, took it down and sent it off on a wagon, with some large silver urns and such other valuables as could be hastily got hold of. When the British did arrive, they ate up the very dinner, and drank the wines, etc., that I had prepared for the president's party." End quote. The sappers and miners of the Corps of Royal Engineers under Captain Blanchard were employed in burning the government buildings, entered the White House. Blanchard reported that it seemed that Madison was so sure that the attacking force would be made prisoners of war that a handsome feast had been prepared. Blanchard and his sappers enjoyed it. The soldiers then burned the president's house, and fuel was added to the fires that night to ensure that they would continue burning into the next day. The day after the destruction of the White House, Rear Admiral Cockburn entered the building of the D.C. newspaper, the National Intelligencer, intending to burn it down. However, several women persuaded him not to because they were afraid the fire would spread to their neighboring houses. Cockburn wanted to destroy the newspaper because its reporters had written so negatively about him, branding him, quote, "the ruffian," end quote. Instead, he ordered his troops to tear the building down brick by brick, and ordered all the C-type destroyed, quote, "so that the rascals can have no further means of abusing my name," end quote. The British sought out the United States Treasury in hopes of finding money or items of worth, but all they found were only records. They burned the United States Treasury and other public buildings. The United States Department of War building was also burned. However, the War and State Department files had been removed, so the books and records had been saved. The only records of the War Department lost were recommendations of appointments for the Army and letters received from 7 years earlier. The first U.S. Patent Office building was saved by the effort of William Thornton, the former architect of the Capitol, and then the Superintendent of Patents, who gained British cooperation to preserve it. Quote, "When the smoke cleared from the dreadful attack, the Patent Office was the only government building left untouched," end quote, in Washington. The Americans had already burned much of the historic Washington Navy Yard, founded by Thomas Jefferson. to prevent capture of stores and ammunition, as well as the 44-gun frigate USS Columbia and the 22-gun USS Argus, both new vessels nearing completion. The Navy Yard's Latrobe Gate, Quarters A and Quarters B were the only buildings to escape destruction. Also spared were the Marine Barracks and the Commandant's house, although several private properties were damaged or destroyed. In the afternoon of August 25th, General Ross sent 200 men to secure a fort on Greenleaf's Point. The fort, later known as Fort McNair, had already been destroyed by the Americans, but 150 barrels of gunpowder remained. While the British were trying to dispose of them by dropping them into a well, the powder ignited. As many as 30 British soldiers were killed in the explosion, with several others injured. Less than 4 days later, after the attack began, a sudden, very heavy thunderstorm, possibly a hurricane, put out the fires. It also spun off a tornado that passed through the center of the Capitol, setting down on Constitution Avenue and lifting 2 cannons before dropping them several yards away and killing British troops and American civilians. Following the storm, the British troops returned to their ships, many of which were badly damaged. There is some debate regarding the effect of this storm on the occupation. While some assert that the storm forced the British to retreat, historians have argued that their intention was only to destroy the city's government buildings, rather than to occupy it for an extended period. It is also clear that Ross never intended to damage private buildings, as had been recommended by Cockburn and Cochrane. Whatever the case, the British occupation of Washington only lasted about 26 hours. Despite this, the storm that saved Washington, as it became known, did the opposite according to some. The rain sizzled and cracked the already charred walls of the White House and ripped away at structures that British had no plans to destroy, such as the Patent Office. The storms may have exacerbated an already dire situation for Washington, D.C. An encounter was noted between Sir George Cockburn and a female resident of Washington. Quote, "Dear God, is this the weather to which you are accustomed to in this infernal country?" End quote, inquired the Admiral. Quote, "This is a special interposition of Providence to drive our enemies from our city," end quote, the woman allegedly called out to Cockburn. Quote, "Not so, madam," end quote, Cockburn retorted. Quote, "It is rather to aid your enemies in the destruction of your city," end quote, before riding off on horseback. The Royal Navy reported that it lost 1 man killed and 6 wounded in the attack, of whom the fatality and 3 of the wounded were from the Corps of Colonial Marines. The destruction of the Capitol, including the Senate House and the House of Representatives, the Arsenal, Dockyard, Treasury, War Office, President's Mansion, bridge over the Potomac, a frigate and a sloop, together with all materiel, was estimated at £365,000, or around $40,540,000 in 2021. A separate British force captured Alexandria, Virginia, on the south side of the Potomac River, while Ross's troops were leaving Washington. The mayor of Alexandria made a deal, and the British refrained from burning the town.
Yeah, let's go. I'm unstoppable, do the impossible. I'm irresponsible, yet I'm phenomenal. I got an arsenal, I'm dropping bombs, you know. No, I'm not stopping, no. Conquer the obstacle. To the top, here I go, think I'm chosen to be the king of rock, think the people have spoken. I can hear the tick-tock of the clock, I'm in motion. So now I'm gonna pop, causing all this commotion.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right, I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, let's go. I don't care what they all say. That's right.
I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay. We work hard, then we all play. Yeah. I'm addicted to the grind, man. That's right. So I refuse to waste time, man. Yeah. One day it all will be fine, man. Let's go. Gotta commit to the climb. You know man. We're back with the Guinness, setting records every minute, every track. In addiction to the fact that we're winning, still we lack something's missing. Need a track that is hitting, making racks, making millions. Oh, yeah. That's the mission. Yeah. I don't waste time, no, I make time. All these people wanna hate, fine, I'ma make mine. While you sitting there complaining, I'll be training. While you sitting there just waiting, I'm creating.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah.